Well, good morning. Happy Saturday. Mark Milam here, your mortgage professional. This past week to start 2026 has to be one of the wildest weeks that I've ever seen in the mortgage industry. There's no doubt that the current administration has read the tea leaves. They're looking out towards the midterm elections and they realize housing is going to be vitally important to them winning the midterms. And so they're throwing a lot of different ideas, some with some merit and some maybe that are questionable. They're throwing a lot of ideas at the problem of housing affordability. Some of these are kind of bizarre ideas like 50-year mortgages or portable mortgages. You can't go back in time and make a mortgage rate that's 3%. You can't turn that into a portable mortgage. So some of these ideas not super well thought out. But then there's some other ones that came out this week, like a ban on institutional investors. Could that be a potential market mover? Listen, in Atlanta, we are the number one city for institutional investors buying investment properties, and there's no doubt that the percentage of investment properties owned by all investors, I'm including everyone here, mom and pop as well as institutional, the percentage of homes owned by investors is way higher now than it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. You go back to 2011, about 8% of all housing stock was owned by investors. Fast forward to today, it's over 20%. So the United States really doesn't have a housing stock problem. What we have is a housing utilization problem. We have too many homes that are owned by investors, and it would appear that the administration believes that the ban on institutional investors is the way to tackle this. Some would call that into question. There's an interesting chart here. I'll flip my screen around to show that investors who own 1,000 properties or more represent just 1.6% of the market, right? So mom and pop landlords, these, individuals who own maybe 1 to 5 properties, they represent about 90% of all single family rentals, right? That is where the bulk of properties are owned, is with mom and pop. You get into 1,000 plus properties or even 100, greater than 100 properties, you're only talking about a couple of percent of the overall market. So does this really move the needle in terms of resolving housing inventory for first-time home buyers? Probably not, right? It's probably not. It is a step potentially in the right direction, but it's likely not going to move the needle significantly in terms of having more housing stock available for purchase for first-time home buyers or move-up buyers. So that idea, maybe a little bit of merit, but really not going to help a ton. But then we got the bombshell on Thursday evening, moving into Friday, that the president had authorized, he said, quote, his representatives. What does he mean by that? Well, he really means the Federal Housing Finance Agency. He authorized the Federal Housing Finance Agency to direct Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to buy 200 billion in mortgage bonds in an effort to lower housing costs. So let's kind of, backtrack here. What does that do? Well, more buying pressure in the bond market will lower interest rates. Theoretically, that's how that works. The more demand there is for something, the lower the rate is. So, what the president's trying to do here is lower interest rates to improve homeownership affordability. Is this the right way to do it? That's certainly up for debate. How long can something like this go on? After all, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not the Fed. They're not the Treasury. They can't just print money to do something like this indefinitely, but depending upon the pace of buying, this could last for a few months or even up to maybe potentially close to a year. And will it provide any sort of relief for mortgage rates? Well, likely it will. How much is up for debate. Some of the articles that were posted yesterday talking about the lowest interest rates in the past 3 years, that's really not accurate. If you go back and look at September of 2024, we're right about the same levels that we were in September of 2024, right before the Fed began their cutting cycle that year. So we're still in great territory. And listen, if you look at the historical average of the 30-year fix since the Great Depression, we're below that. So we're in really great territory for interest rates. Interest rates are likely never going back into the fours or the threes, at least not in my lifetime, barring a cataclysmic event. But can we get down into the very low sixes, into the high fives, or even the mid fives? Yes, we can. And some of that has to do with improving the spread between the 10-year treasury and the 30-year fixed. And that's exactly what this idea here, this purchase of 200 billion will do. It will improve the spread between the 10-year Treasury and the 30-year fix. So even though the 10-year might not be dropping substantially, we may see mortgage rates drop because that spread between these two instruments is going to improve with a move like this. So this may be the most impactful of all of the initiatives that have been announced by the administration. Take away the 50-year amortization mortgages or portable mortgages or institutional ban, a ban on institutional investors. This one here has the potential to move the needle the most. And listen, if you are a buyer in the marketplace or you're contemplating a home purchase in 2026, this is great news for you because it just means affordability got a little bit more within your reach. I will say this, and we'll close with this. As we sit here on January the 10th, I can tell you that the activity that I have seen in the marketplace in and around the Atlanta area is as robust in this time of the year in early January as I have ever seen it. Normally, you wait until somewhere around mid-February to end of February to start seeing the spring buying cycle pick up. But we are seeing a lot of activity. It seems like there's a lot of pent-up demand. We did talk about this last year that there's a demand bubble growing in the United States. As people struggle with affordability, it doesn't mean that their life isn't evolving. And life has certainly evolved to a point now that we see that demand bubble starting to break, and we have a lot of inquiry, a lot of activity, a lot of pre-approvals for home buyers looking to buy in this coming year. So if we can be of any service to you over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out. Mark.Milam at highlandmtg.com. Have a good weekend.